Okay, so imagine you're watching a show, right? And the main character has this just impossible choice.
Hmm.
Do they tell a truth that could absolutely wreck someone's life? Or maybe tell a lie? A lie that protects that person but just feels wrong.
Yeah, those moments really pull you in, don't they?
They really do. It makes you think, are there times when maybe a small lie is actually better? Or is truth just like fundamental no matter what happens? What really matters more to you when the pressure's on like that?
Well, those kinds of dilemmas grab us because they basically force us to confront our own values.
Right.
It shows that ethics isn't just, textbook stuff. It's about figuring out how to handle those really messy, real-life situations where values collide.
Exactly. And that is absolutely what we are diving into today. We're looking at business ethics, moral choices, basically how people make decisions.
Hmm.
And our mission here is to explore some real examples and hopefully give you, our listener, some ways to think through these kinds of tough calls when they inevitably pop up in your life.
And, you might be listening and thinking, okay, business ethics, I'm not in a big company. This isn't really my world right now.
Sure, that makes sense.
But think back, even just think back to school. Ethical questions come up constantly, like how you handle a group project maybe. Or do you say something if you see cheating?
Oh, absolutely.
These things, they seem small then, but they're actually setting the stage. They're practice runs for the bigger ethical decisions you'll face later on.
You are so right. I mean, think about it. That moment where you could maybe glance at someone else's test paper,
Yeah.
or, you're totally slammed and it's tempting to just copy a friend's homework,
We've all felt that pressure.
or even just like coasting in a group assignment, letting others do the heavy lifting. They seem like tiny things, little shortcuts maybe,
Hmm.
but they're actually tests of your honesty, your sense of responsibility. You're kind of building that ethical muscle, or maybe not.
And those little tests, the school situations, they're literally forming the habits, the mental pathways for how you'll deal with much trickier stuff later. In work, in life. It's about tuning that internal compass early.
So let's get specific then. What
Mhm.
exactly are ethics? What does that word even mean?
Well, at its core, ethics are kind of like the rules or guidelines a society comes up with to help people treat each other decently.
Okay. Like social rules.
Yeah, exactly. They give us a sort of map for tricky situations, help us figure out our values, and hopefully make better choices. And man, in the world today, with everything changing so fast, having that strong ethical grounding, it's more important than ever.
Okay, so let's dig into that foundation a bit. We're using the word ethics, but you also hear morals and, of course, law. How do these fit together? Or how are they different?
That's a really good question. It helps to untangle them. So think of ethics as those broader societal ideas about how we should interact.
Right.
Like, uh, say you find a super embarrassing video of a classmate online. The ethical thing, what society generally expects, is you just keep scrolling. You definitely don't share it. That reflects what we as a group think is right.
Okay, got it. Ethics community standards. So what are morals then?
Morals are,
Mm-hmm.
they're more personal, they're your individual reasons for acting, your inner sense of right and wrong.
Ah, okay.
So imagine a friend tells you they're having some really, really dark thoughts, maybe about hurting themselves. Your morals, your personal values about friendship, about compassion, that's what kicks in and makes you want to get them help. It's internal.
Okay, so ethics are the societal guideposts. Morals are my personal compass. Where does the law come in?
Law is the baseline. It's the set of rules everyone has to follow for society to function safely. Laws against theft, assault, stuff like that, they're mandatory.
Right, mandatory. So the key difference is,
It's really about enforcement and source. Laws are compulsory, break them, and there are official consequences. Ethics and morals. They're more about choice, about our own judgment, our conscience. Ethics come from societal agreement, morals from within you, and laws are the non-negotiable rules for everyone.
that helps.
Think about using something like ChatGPT on a test. Is it illegal? Maybe not everywhere, not yet. But is it ethical? Does it align with your morals about honesty and earning your grade? That's where the distinction really matters.
Yeah, or like sharing notes from an online course someone paid for. Maybe not strictly illegal in some cases, but definitely raises ethical flags about fairness and intellectual property.
Exactly. So you've got these layers guiding us.
Okay, so we have these different levels of guidance. Now, I know the sources we looked at get into some pretty major ethical theories. Why? Why should someone, listening right now care about these theories? Aren't they just academic?
Well, not really. Think of these four big ones. Utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, and justice theory, think of them like different pairs of glasses.
Okay, glass.
Yeah, different lenses you can use to look at an ethical problem. Each one gives you a different perspective, a different way to think about what's right or wrong.
Mm.
Understanding them basically gives you a better toolkit for making choices. So like having, I don't know, different maps for different kinds of journeys. Helps you see the terrain more clearly.
I like that. Different maps for different ethical landscapes. Okay, so what's the first map in our toolkit? Lay it on us.
All right, first up is utilitarianism. The basic idea here is simple. Choose the action that creates the most overall good.
Most good for the most people.
Pretty much. It's all about the consequences, the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You weigh the potential results and pick the one that maximizes happiness or benefit for the greatest number.
Sounds reasonable on the surface, but I can already sense some potential problems there.
You're right, it gets complicated fast.
Mm-hmm.
Take that example from the source about Instagram, thinking about using infinite scroll.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So, okay, maybe infinite scroll keeps people on the app longer, boosts ad revenue. That seems like a good outcome for the company, maybe for
Like
shareholders.
quantifiable good.
But
Yeah.
what about the users? Spending way too much time scrolling, maybe it hurts their mental health, their focus. Utilitarianism says you have to weigh all those outcomes. Who benefits? Who gets harmed?
And how do you even measure that good? Or weigh, like, company profit against someone's well-being?
That's the big challenge. And it's easy with this theory to maybe overlook the harm done to a smaller group if the benefit to the larger group seems, well, larger.
That's a really important point. So it's not just a simple numbers game.
Exactly. A really thoughtful utilitarian approach looks at short-term and long-term effects. And it's not just about the amount of good, but the quality too.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like when you're thinking about what career to pursue, utilitarianism might push you to think beyond just the starting salary. It encourages you to consider, how could your skills, your passions actually contribute something meaningful over your whole career? What creates lasting positive impact?
Okay, that makes sense. Focus on outcomes, maximizing the overall good, long-term view.
Got it.
What's our next ethical map?
Next up is deontology. Now, this theory kind of flips things around. It doesn't focus on the results. It focuses on our duties, our obligations.
Duties!
Yeah. Deontology argues that some actions are just inherently right or inherently wrong, period, regardless of what happens afterward.
Ah, like some absolute rules.
Kind of. Think of that classic idea, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's very deontological. It's about the principle, the duty, the inherent rightness of the action itself.
So follow the rules no matter the consequences. Is that it?
Essentially, yes.
Hmm.
The source mentioned that scenario about reporting your roommate if they're selling illegal copies of textbooks.
Right, the awkward situation.
Even if telling on them ruins your friendship, a deontologist would say, look, you have a duty to uphold the law, to respect intellectual property. So reporting them is the morally right thing to do, even if the outcome is personally unpleasant.
Wow, okay. I can see the strength in that, the clear moral line.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like it could be really rigid.
It definitely can be. That's one of the main criticisms. Sticking strictly to rules can cause problems, like ruining that friendship.
Yeah.
It might also mean you miss the bigger picture sometimes, or face impossible choices if your duties conflict. It's not always great with those messy, gray areas of life.
That makes total sense. Okay, so utilitarianism results. Deontology rules duty. What's the third ethical framework?
That would be virtue ethics. This one shifts the focus again. It's less about specific actions or rules and more about developing good character traits.
Character traits, like being honest, brave.
Exactly. Honesty, integrity, fairness, compassion, courage, all those things. Virtue ethics asks not what should I do in this situation, but what kind of person should I be?
Ah, okay, so it's about building yourself into a good person over time.
Precisely. The source mentioned the film Schindler's List as an example. Schindler starts out focused on profit, but gradually his character evolves. He becomes driven by compassion, by justice, and ends up saving hundreds of lives.
Right.
Virtue ethics says if you cultivate these positive traits, these virtues, then ethical actions will tend to flow naturally from who you are.
That feels quite profound, actually. More holistic. Are there downsides to this approach?
Well, it's a great perspective, but even people with really good intentions, good character, can sometimes make ethical missteps.
How so?
The source gave some interesting examples, like Maybe an honest manager tries to protect your team by hiding bad company news.
Okay.
Or a really kind doctor who ends up overprescribing pain medication out of compassion. Or a teacher who strives for fairness but maybe doesn't see that different students have different needs.
So good intentions aren't always enough.
Right. It shows we still need to think carefully. Maybe use those other ethical lenses too, even if we're trying to be virtuous. It's not always simple.
That's a very important point. Okay, we've covered outcomes, duties, and character. What's the last major theory?
The final one is justice theory. And this one is all about fairness.
Fairness. Okay.
It focuses on making sure rules are applied fairly to everyone, that benefits and burdens are distributed equitably, that if harm is done, it's rectified, and that the processes used to make decisions are just and transparent.
Justice and fairness. That seems absolutely fundamental. How does this play out in, say, those school examples we talked about earlier?
Good question. Let's take group projects again. Justice theory would demand that the grading is fair, that it actually reflects what each person contributed.
Right, not just giving everyone the same grade if one person did all the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That links to distributing benefits equitably. Or, if someone accidentally deletes a group file or damages a borrowed book, justice requires making it right, fixing the damage, restoring the file. And when dealing with things like cheating, or maybe someone trying to alter attendance records, justice theory demands clear rules, fair procedures, and consistent application, but also balancing that strict fairness with maybe some compassion for individual circumstances where appropriate.
That balance sounds key. Wow, okay, these four theories, utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, justice theory, they really give you a powerful way to break down ethical problems. It's like having different tools in your belt.
Yeah, different perspectives.
Now, our sources also kind of boiled some of this down into more practical, like everyday rules. Rules for just being good.
Yes, exactly. Think of these as guiding principles for daily life. The first one is about being helpful.
Helpful. Seems straightforward.
Well, yes, but it's not just about, opening a door for someone. It's about thinking about the long-term impact, the overall benefit.
Okay. Like that career example again.
Precisely. Thinking about how your work can genuinely contribute, not just the immediate payoff. Let's call it focusing on long-term positive impact, not just short-term wins.
I like that phrasing. Lasting helpfulness. Okay, what's principle number 2?
Being honest. This one really is pretty straightforward, to tell the truth, in all situations.
The foundation.
Absolutely. The source really stressed that honesty builds trust. And while a lie might seem easier in the moment,
It usually comes back to bite you.
almost always, like
Yeah.
lying on a resume maybe gets you the interview, but the long-term damage, if it's discovered, huge.
Honesty. Got it. Number 3.
Being fair. This ties into justice theory, of course. It's about equal rights, equal opportunities.
First in hiring.
Exactly. Focusing on skills, experience, the person's fit for the role, not, who they know or their background, and having clear rules that apply to everyone so the playing field feels level.
Fairness, consistency. Makes sense.
Let's
Fourth
move back.
principle.
Being thankful. This is interesting. It's not just saying thank you. It's more about reflecting on what's good in your life, who helped you, and thinking about how you can give back.
Like paying it forward.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you got a scholarship, being thankful might mean appreciating it, sure, but also thinking, how can I help someone else like me down the road? It connects gratitude to action.
I really like that. Gratitude that motivates contribution. Okay, and the last principle.
Number 5 is being respectful, honoring people's choices, their privacy, their dignity.
Especially important now with social media everywhere.
For sure. Thinking twice or 3 times before you share someone's picture or private info without their okay.
Yeah.
And it applies offline too, respecting personal space, listening to different ideas even if you disagree, treating people with basic dignity.
Helpful, honest, fair, thankful, respectful. Those 5 really do cover a lot of ground in a practical way. Okay, so to bring this all together, the sources gave us a case study, right? Chen's dilemma.
Yes, Chen. He's a new accountant, just started a job. And his boss is pressuring him to basically cook the books, make the company's financial reports look better than they actually are.
Oof, classic ethical nightmare scenario. So how can we use those big series we just talked about to unpack Chen's situation?
Okay, let's walk through it. First, utilitarianism maximizing good. Chen needs to weigh the outcomes.
Right.
Short term. Okay, maybe fudging the numbers keeps people's jobs safe for a bit, keeps the stock price stable, pleases his boss. Seems like some good, but long term. If, or more likely when, this gets found out. Massive fallout. Lawsuits, company collapses, investors lose everything, employees lose jobs anyway, the potential harm is huge and affects way more people. So the utilitarian calculus probably points towards not doing it.
Okay, the potential long-term damage outweighs the short-term benefits. Makes sense. What about deontology, the duty perspective?
For deontology, it's much simpler, in a way. Chen is an accountant. He has a professional duty to be truthful and accurate in financial reporting.
Full stop.
Pretty much. Falsifying records is a direct violation of that core duty. The pressure from his boss, the potential consequences, they don't change the fundamental wrongness of the act itself from this perspective.
Duty calls for honesty, regardless of outcome. Got it. How does virtue ethics look at Chen?
Virtue ethics focuses on Chen's character. What kind of accountant, what kind of person does he want to be?
The who am I question.
Exactly. This is a defining moment. Does he act with integrity, honesty, courage even to resist the pressure?
Yeah.
Or does he compromise his values? His choice here shapes his reputation, sure, but also his own self-respect.
So it's a chance to live his values, or not. Okay. And lastly, justice theory. Fairness.
Justice theory zooms in on the unfairness of the act. Cooking the books deliberately misleads everyone who relies on that information, investors, lenders, even other employees.
You cannot make fair decisions.
Precisely. It violates principles of transparency and fair dealing. Some people might benefit temporarily from the deception, but ultimately it creates an unjust situation where others will likely suffer the consequences. It's fundamentally unfair to stakeholders.
Wow. Seeing how each theory sheds a different kind of light on the same problem it's really powerful. It shows there often isn't one simple answer, right? You're often weighing conflicting principles.
Absolutely. And that really leads us to the main takeaways from all this. First off, business ethics, or just ethics in general, it isn't some high-level abstract thing for executives. It's part of everyone's daily life.
Right, from Chen the accountant to a student figuring out a group project.
Exactly. And it often boils down to that core idea from virtue ethics, trying to be a good person overall.
Yeah, and thinking about those long-term effects, like utilitarianism pushes us to do, not just what's easy or beneficial right now for you.
Definitely. Considering the ripple effects of your choices is crucial.
And underpinning so much of this is that commitment to honesty and integrity, like deontology and the practical rules emphasize, that seems non-negotiable.
It really is the bedrock. Without honesty, trust disappears and everything else starts to crumble.
And finally, remembering that every choice you make, big or small, is shaping your character. It's building who you are piece by piece.
The constant process, that ethical
Yeah.
development. Not a destination, but a journey.
This has been incredibly insightful. So thinking about all these lenses, utilitarianism, deontology, virtue ethics, justice, and those practical rules, here's maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on.
Okay.
When you face your next complex ethical decision, big or small, which single principle, which ethical lens will you try to prioritize? And more importantly, why that one? Something to think about long after this deep dive ends.